Hello, everybody, and welcome to Getting STIG-y with it. If you were expecting a 90s dance party, you're at the wrong place. We will be covering STIG compliance today with Hytrust. STIG compliance is Security Technical Implementation Guide. It is a cybersecurity protocol for standardizing security protocols within network servers, computers, and logical designs to enhance overall security. So with that said, I'd like to introduce Adam Sokolowski, who will be introducing George Carpenter. Adam?
Hey everyone, this is Adam Sokolowski. I'm the Strategic Account Manager at Hytrust. We also have George Carpenter on the line, and he is our solution architect that covers the public sector and is going to be taking you through how we're going to be addressing the STIGs. And as we go through this journey in the next 30 minutes, we're going to look around encryption at rest and what that means to you, and also how we harden the configurations within the virtual environment, specifically around VMware. So when you have a virtual environment that is specific around VMware, you're going to have two major tasks that are going to come through the STIG. One of them is going to be the encryption at rest, and then more specifically turning on the VTPM platform or the VTPM module, and we have specific guidelines around those STIGs. And then we have templates that we are going to be able to show you on how we show what type of vulnerabilities that you have, what you want to do about those vulnerabilities, and if you want to remediate them. So we have a very powerful solution on how to address the STIG configuration hardening and encryption at rest. And I'm going to pass this over to George, and we're going to show you in the next 25 minutes how we do this in your virtual environment.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Hi, everybody. My name is George Carpenter. I'm going to speak to you today about data protection and compliance. And so let's just jump right into it. Our first solution is around data protection, which is enabling the ability for you to encrypt your virtual machines. This is becoming more and more important as time has moved on. So, pardon me, one of the ways that we support this is by being able to supply an external KMS, a key management server, to VMware. Now, when we do this, we can support three separate solutions with VMware, and those are vSAN encryption, vSphere encryption, and VTPM, so the Virtual Trusted Platform module. Okay, and so very simply, you're looking at the appliance right here. This is a clustered model for high availability, data resiliency. So we have multiple of these nodes running in different locations. Each of the nodes will contain a copy of your key database. That allows us to suffer a failure if necessary and still be able to provide you with your keys. That's very, very important. So what you're looking at is the appliance itself. This is all software, by the way, OVA or ISO image deployment. And what we can do is spin one of these up in about 10 minutes. So within the hour or so, I can have you encrypting and starting down that journey of getting you to a certified, data protection encryption solution. Okay, so once you've enabled the cluster, so you can see here, I'm showing you on the screen that I actually do have a cluster, and in my case, I'm running two nodes in it. So like I said, both of these contain a copy of the key database. So once one has the key, the other immediately gets the key. They copy it encrypted. So basically, this is a Linux-based operating system. It's actually CentOS, and we run an encrypted object store underneath it that contains all your keys. So what happens is one of them gets the key, generates the key, passes the key to the second or other nodes, and then passes the key back to VMware. Okay, so what we do is we set up KMIP, so Key Management Interface Protocol. KMIP is a standard in the world today. It is managed by the OASIS group. So OASIS determines the standards, they determine the protocols. As you can see here, there are multiple protocols that we support. I just had a customer who requested 1.2 support, for example. So this changes. So it's an open standard. OASIS determines those standards, and we will follow those standards. Okay, so we're open. That customer I just mentioned with the 1.2, they were an unknown quantity to Hytrust. In other words, we'd never worked with them before, and we were able to get our appliance working with them pretty easily. They commented how simple it was to get it up and running and get it configured. Okay, So once you have it configured, which is pretty easy, basically change the disabled to enabled, it's now running. And what we do is create a certificate. Now, you can have multiple objects talking to this as third parties. A couple examples: NetApp, Nutanix, Scality is that other one I mentioned that work with us. Basically, anyone who's KMIP certified will work with us. Again, we do adhere to that standard. So you create a certificate. Excuse me. In this case, I created one for vCenter 6.7. So this way, I know that this certificate is. I only really want to use that certificate for vSphere 6.7. Now, obviously, I could have other third-party keys. So let's use an example here. Let's say I wanted to talk to NetApp 2. I could set up a different certificate for NetApp, okay? But then, you know, all the keys will basically be contained in that same database. So I take this certificate, right, and we jump over to vCenter. So this is my vCenter environment, 6.7. Not sure which version I'm on, but doesn't matter. So this is the, you go to the top of the tree, go to configure, go to key management servers, and you create a cluster. Now this cluster name is very important. It's something you want to make sure that you've recorded, okay? Because this cluster name is how these servers will talk to it. And if you're ever forced to, let's say, re-add that cluster or recreate vCenter, I've done both, this name becomes very important, okay? So what you do is you add the nodes in. Now these nodes could be, like I said, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, or one of my customers is actually running 2 sites, 2 vCenters. So when they do declare disaster or do failovers, the other vCenter will be in control of the virtual machine, and he has to be aware of the encryption. So therefore, he's also talking to the key management servers. For example, he would be 3, 4, 1, 2. So this order is kind of up to you guys. It's kind of up to the customers how it's set up. You know, feel free to ask questions if we ever do have a discussion, but, you know, just as an example. Now what we'll do is we'll put this in and we'll apply that certificate, and now everything's talking. Now at this point, I can go to one of those 3 solutions. So vSAN encryption is pretty simple. You set up the vSAN hardware, and you go ahead and can either do it as a greenfield environment, meaning you're creating that vSAN from scratch. In other words, I just went through the process a couple days ago where I was actually picking the capacity disks and the caching disks and then turning on encryption from the get-go, meaning they were brand new out-of-the-box systems. Or you could have a brownfield environment where I'm actually adding encryption to an existing vSAN. Now, those are 2 different solutions, and I just want to talk about them real quick. If you do it in a greenfield environment, he'll just encrypt the entire vSAN, okay? There's nothing running. You don't have any virtual machines. All's good. If this is a brownfield environment where you do have virtual machines running, the way this will work is you'll encrypt the first vSAN node, then he'll actually put it in maintenance mode. He'll move all the virtual machines off it, encrypt the first vSAN node, then move to the second, move to the third, move to the fourth. So he'll be down for as long as it takes to do that encryption on those disks. You're not actually encrypting the virtual machines, you're actually encrypting the drives underneath. Now, quick note on vSAN, it's in VMware's documentation, it's in our documentation. You cannot run KMS, Key Management Server, on the vSAN you're encrypting. You will lock your keys in the car, okay? That's very bad. So, second solution is called vSphere encryption. Now, this is a per VM. What you'll do is take that virtual machine and you will shut it down, okay? Offline state. And you will change its storage policies. You can see as I'm doing on the screen right now. So in this case, I created an encrypted storage policy, okay? And I applied it to all the associated things with this virtual machine. In this case, it was just the home directory and one of the hard disks. You could have multiple hard disks. You could have just one large one. Your mileage may vary here. But he's going to encrypt the majority of the files. I think there's 1 or 2 that VMware does not encrypt. And he'll encrypt the hard disk associated with it. Once you hit OK, this process will start. You'll see a little bar at the bottom beginning the encryption process. Okay, that'll take as long as it takes. The virtual machine, the size of the virtual machine will determine how long that encryption may take. So a very large virtual machine with, let's say, 1 terabyte more of storage may take a considerable amount of time to encrypt versus the one I just showed you, which was 16 gig, which was a few minutes. Okay. Once he's done, you can go ahead and actually boot him, and he is now encrypted. Now, the way you can tell that is right here. Under encryption, it says VM configuration files are encrypted. and the hard disk is encrypted, okay? So if I just went to a different system real quick, just so you can see the differences and what that may look like, okay? Let that come up for a second. In this case, I don't get that message at all. So I have not encrypted this with VMware's vSphere encryption, okay? Third solution is called VTPM, so the Virtual Trusted Platform Module. Now, again, the virtual machine must be in an offline state to do this. And what you're going to do is go into settings. Now, there's a few things I'll note. This is all VMware's stuff. There's a setting in their configuration files to help with this, but it's UEFI boot, must be Windows 2016 or 2010 or above, must be on an offline state. And I think there's one more. And once you do that, you'll be able to go into add device and you can add the trusted platform module. Now, this is a pretty simple process, but it does require the system to actually go offline for that amount of time, okay? So once it does that, he'll negotiate keys with our KMS and you're done. You can now reboot the virtual machine. And what that looks like real quick is this is that virtual machine, okay? And you can see here under Device Manager, there's Security Devices, Trusted Platform Module 2.0. Okay, so that popped up as soon as I rebooted the virtual machine, okay? So those are the three solutions that we can support. Again, we can support third parties as well. Now, one quick mention, just because it's our product, okay, is another way you could do encryption, just to meet those, just the STIGs, to meet that encryption need, is to use what's called Hytrust data control. Now, just real quick on the compare and contrast, I can do data drives online. I can't really do anything about system drives. You're going to have to reboot. I can't do anything about physics. But I can do those data drives online. I can apply additional granularity, we call access controls, to prevent certain people from seeing the contents of those drives. So I can have a day-to-day administrator be able to go in, reboot the virtual machine, patch it, whatever, change administrative things, but not be able to access the drives that are encrypted. Meanwhile, the person who owns the drive will be able to go in and interact normally with those encrypted files, okay? And the third thing I'll mention is that we can do online read keys. So again, that online encryption, we can do online read keys. So if that's something you need to meet, 30, 60, 90 days, read key the virtual machine. And also we can address public cloud. So we can actually take workloads running on-prem VMware, take them and put them up into Azure, up into AWS. They keep the same keys, they keep the same back-end infrastructure, and you retain control of the keys, no one else, just you. So that's pretty important just from a regulatory compliance standard, being able to retain control of your keys, therefore retain control of your data, okay? So those are the big differences with the data protection here. Obviously, we can go further into this. If you're interested, please let us know. Okay, the last thing I want to cover is what we call Hytrust Cloud Control. Okay, so I'm going to log in here while I talk. So Hytrust Cloud Control came into the world as the ability to do role-based access controls in a VMware environment. Okay, what I mean by that is I can have, different groups, red, green, blue, all together, no air gapping that required, and not be able to affect each other. So red can only affect red, blue can only affect blue, green can only affect green. Okay, and I can stop bad behaviors by using a privileged access model, meaning that the user only has access to the systems that they have access to and nothing more, okay? And in this fashion, you can segment your environment as needed or as necessary, okay? One of the other things we can do with this is actually set up what we call secondary approval. So what secondary approval says is I'm in a group with a bunch of different administrators and I want to perform an action. Let's say delete a virtual machine. That delete a virtual machine is going to kick off a secondary approval, meaning one of my compatriots, one of my coworkers has to come in and say, what are you trying to do? What virtual machine are you attempting to affect? How are you doing this? Oh, okay, yes, we discussed that in a meeting. Go ahead and delete that virtual machine. Or he says, George, why are you trying to delete the domain controller? Why are you doing that? And he could say, no, maybe I fat fingered it. Maybe I hit the wrong button by mistake. Okay, so you can see the power here that we could stop bad behaviors by just allowing a second set of eyes to go in. And these groups, there doesn't have to be hard and fast. I can have, just all the coworkers in here. I could have a higher level, let's say managers would do that approval, okay? And the third thing, and really what I wanted to focus on today, was compliance. Now, this has become really important, especially with the STIGs, NIST templates, PCI, HIPAA. Okay, they all have different layers and needs for global compliance. Now, what you're looking at here is global compliance for my environment. Now, my environment includes AWS, Kubernetes containers, and VMware environment. So if I just mouse over here, I've got 10 VMware hosts, I've got 2 AWS accounts, and I've got 2 different Kubernetes clusters that I'm running. Okay, so a whole multitude of stuff here. Now, Hytrust wants you to be able to move workloads back and forth, and actually, obviously, compliance is a big piece of that. So if I want to take a workload running in vSphere and move it over into Kubernetes, how do I make sure that I'm adhering to the NIST standard, or to the DISA standard, or to whatever standard, right? So this would be one way to be able to do that, be able to scan both sets and be able to compare and contrast, okay? Excuse me. What you see at the bottom is a history of my environment. And as you can see, it has drifted back and forth as I've made changes, as I've done certain things like add hosts, remove hosts, add virtual machines, or remove virtual machines, change settings, run assessments, run remediations against the environment. You can see that right now we're sitting at 5 compliant, 5 non-compliant in the VMware environment, 1 compliant, 1 non-compliant in the Kubernetes, and 2 non-compliant in AWS, okay? So how does this work? All right, so let's jump in. Security tab, configuration hardening. So configuration hardening is our templates, okay? So under templates, what I would do is I would come in here, let's give it a second to refresh, and I would, go ahead and create a brand new template. So let's just go hit the plus button. So let's just call this one tech, okay? Real simple. And we want to choose a template, okay? So once he takes the, whoops, sorry about that, I didn't choose the template. So under here, you see I have 3 different resource types. Now, as Hytrust adds more resources, let's say Azure, which is on our list, OpenShift, other things that we're going to do here, we're going to add more and more templates to this. Okay, so ESXi, and there's a whole bunch of templates associated. Now, some of these I created, and some of these are just ways that base templates that you can then create and modify. So real quick, I'm going to go to the top here and select the ESXi STIG, okay? And I'm going to hit the continue button. He's going to show me what this looks like, okay? So 61 total operations. So that means there are 61 operations that I can do against my ESXi hosts, okay? So that's the level we're hitting. We also have some that operate against the vCenter itself. We also have some that operate against the VMs themselves, okay? So 3 different ways to look at compliance in the VMware environment, okay? So once this completes, we'll be able to go into the template, and I'll show you what exactly it looks like. Now, the templates themselves will be constantly updated. In fact, I'm running a later update of this. In fact, the GA code just went live the other day, and there are actually more operations in the GA release, which is all good. So let's go down and go look at one tech. That means we're constantly updating the system. And we do this as template packs. Those are signed by Hytrust. So you know that, it's coming from us, nobody's monkeying with it, that kind of thing. Okay, so we'll produce those every couple of months or so, maybe more, hasn't really been determined yet. But in this case, you're looking at the template itself, okay? So 61 total operations, 39 are configured. That means they're very, they're already configured. There's nothing here for you to configure, okay? They're either on or they're off. So a quick example here would be SSH. So SSH could be on or off, and that's it. There's no in-between area. Now, not configured are those in-between areas. And a quick example of that would be, what NTP hosts are you using in your environment versus what NTP hosts am I running? Did you configure logging? What servers are you running? Are you running multiple logging servers to send things to? Okay, those are all going to be customized for your environment. And the last is the remediation. So how many of these things can we hit against? A lot of the remediations are backed up by API calls that we can make. So some of that's opened up by VMware so that we can actually make the remediation. So 61 total and 55 can be remediated, okay? So if I just click on this button, I can actually drill into the template more. And just as a quick example here, what this looks like. So right here is enable remote logging for ESXi. So real quick on this, let's see what this looks like. So here's the details, okay? where it came from, what number is associated with it, the actual place where we grab this thing from. So this actually redirects us to a STIG viewer or maybe the NIST template itself, where it's actually coming from, just to show you where we grab the information out of. Whether it's an assess and remediate, custom notes, you can change the severity at the bottom. So if you say no, logging is absolutely critical, we consider this a high. Parameters is your environment. So for example, I know in my environment, it's .113. That's my logging server, okay? You may have multiple. You may have a logging server and a SIM tool sitting out there, something like QRadar or Splunk or one of those others, where you want to actually do more analysis on the syslog itself versus just grabbing all the logs, okay? And the last thing is the actual remediation steps, which is good if you don't remember where that setting is. Maybe you configured it and forgot. Maybe you're a junior administrator just starting out in the world and you want to, learn these things as well. Or it's a Monday and you can't remember where the heck it is, okay? So last thing I want to show you is we're going to close out of this one quick. It's going to take us back to the template, okay? And what I can do here is click on it. So I'm going to go back into it. I can actually hit the plus button. And I can actually say, you know what? I want to add the NIST stuff to it as well. So I'm going to now fully customize this for my environment. Okay. Now, obviously, NIST and DISA have some similarities. He says it's 109, but we all know there's some duplicates here. So I'm just going to say add them all. Okay. He'll figure it out as we're going. So go ahead and add them. Let him think about that for a minute. Okay. He immediately came back and said there's a bunch of dupes. That's fine. Go ahead and figure it out. And we'll basically get a whole new list in a second. So the power here is you can customize the templates for your environment for what you need to do. Okay, so this doesn't have to be a, hey, I need to run all these. No, you can go in and customize it by either adding or subtracting or just grabbing what you feel is needed or necessary out of it. So if I X out of this for a second and go back to the main, now I have 114 operations, 87 configured, 27 not configured, and 106 remediable. Okay. Once you've done all that, we go back to the configuration tab and we can set a policy. So how often do you want to run this? Do you want it daily, weekly, monthly? Do you want to run it just an assessment? Do you want to run it as an assessment and a remediate? Those are all questions for your environment. Last thing I'll leave you with is, since this is pretty critical to the environment, we also do this report. Here's what it looks like. It's an executive summary. So real quick, so this could be for people who don't look at this stuff on a regular basis or can't log into vCenter and they want to know where we are in compliance. Maybe the audit's coming at the end of the month, right? So a quick summary. How many? So how many compute, how many network, how many storage? What are we looking at here? So 5 and 5, not the greatest, okay? The trend looks like it's actually getting worse, okay? We're drifting more. So maybe you want to put some people on this, and it does actually show some steps. You know, hey, you need to remediate your vCenters. Hey, you should go and do this stuff. So you may want to task some people with doing this or turn on the remediation, okay? Matt, that's all I really wanted to show today. Hopefully that's given the customers, an idea how Hytrust can help with both data protection as well as the compliance environment. And obviously, we at Hytrust are more than happy to help if there's any questions.
Absolutely, George. And I'll be including all the contact information for everyone if anyone viewing this later wants to learn about how Hytrust work in their environment. George, we appreciate your time. Thank you for participating today. And everyone on, thank you for joining us as well.
Thanks, Matt. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you.